Okay. Are we ready to go?
It's loading now. We should be live any minute. Okay. All right, we're streaming live. We're good to go.
Ready to go? Okay, yep, we're good to go. Welcome to the JOFA webinar on Original Women of the Wall. My name is Rosalind Bell. I'm a member of the JOFA board and co-editor of the JOFA Journal. And I'm very pleased to be here today with some old friends, Shulamit Magnus and Cheryl Birkner. Let me tell you about them. Shulamit is Professor Emerita of Jewish Studies and History at Oberlin College. She's a Jewish historian and winner of a National Jewish Book Award and the Hadassah Brandeis Award for several of her books. She is a founder of Women of the Wall. She read Torah at the first women's Tfilat group there and was on the ground during the first year of Women of the Wall's existence. She was a plaintiff, among others, on the first Women of the Wall Supreme Court suit to win recognition of Jewish women's prayer rights at the Kotel. And she is a plaintiff on the second of these suits being brought now by activists of the original Women of the Wall for enforcement of these rights. Cheryl Birkner Mack holds a master's degree in Jewish education from the Jewish Theological Seminary. She taught rabbinics and biblical studies in Cleveland and served on the board of the Jewish Educators Assembly in the US. She moved to Israel in 2006, where she teaches English and other subjects. She served on the board of Women of the Wall, helped edit their Siddur, and served as Gabait for their services. Cheryl resigned from the Women of the Wall board over the decision to enter into negotiations with the Israeli government to move to Robinson's Arch, and is now an activist with Original Women of the Wall. And she is also a plaintiff in the suit being brought by the group. Welcome, Shulamit and Cheryl.
Thank you.
Your group calls itself, in English, Original Women of the Wall. Could you tell us about the origins of the Women of the Wall and what of its origins and traditions you are especially committed to maintaining?
Go ahead, Shulamit.
Okay, well, I mean, basically the founding purpose of the group is for women's Tfilat, the Kotel. As you know, the group was founded in 1988, in December 1988, in the context of the first International Conference of Jewish Feminists, which took place in Jerusalem. Over 1,000 Jewish women came from all over the world to participate in that. There were women from all walks of Jewish life and all areas of Jewish religious observance and secularity. Rivka Haut, Orthodox Talmud scholar from Brooklyn, and Norma Joseph, one of the founders of JOFA, suggested that the group of women go the next one morning to the Kotel and have a tefillah there and read Torah there. And anyone who was interested was invited to come to an organizing meeting. As soon as I heard of that, of course, I went. I had started a women's tefillah group in my own apartment in Manhattan. It had met for years. I had the dubious distinction of being condemned by 5 Rashi Yeshiva of Yeshiva University, along with the other women who participated in that group. So Rivka Haut knew of me, and I went to that meeting. Of course, I was very interested in going, and we did go the next morning, about 70 of us, Phyllis Chesler and Norma and Rivka, and Gila Razel Raphael led Tfilah, and Deborah Bryn, both of these two were Reconstructionist rabbinical students, organized it and kept the group kind of going. I read Torah there, right up against the stones. It was one of the highlights of my life. And that's how the group got started. And Bana Haberman, who lived in Jerusalem, asked a very good question, which I think we should all think about after that first tefillah. She said, why did it take a group of women from the United States to come up with this idea? The Kotel is in our backyard. Why didn't we think of it? And I think that that's really a question to ponder. But Bana then decided that she would continue this, that this is something that should be continued. I was here for the year that year, so I then joined and participated in an ongoing way. There was extraordinary violence that first year. It was shocking. I had never experienced anything like that in my life in the United States, including in bad neighborhoods. I was doing my doctoral work at Columbia. Never was attacked, certainly not in a holy site and certainly not for the act of prayer. It was an extraordinary experience, both the solidarity of the women across many diverse lines and the astounding violence that came at us, the resistance that came at us. The group at that point was, we adhered to Orthodox halacha. We didn't count ourselves a minion. We didn't do dvarim shebikdusha. And we were attacked violently nonetheless. And what that made clear to us is that this was not about halacha. It was about women who were going outside the bounds of what patriarchal culture decides are women's limits. And I remember once, every time I would go in, there'd be some crazy scene there. I could never fathom what was going on. I was just stunned. I never knew when we got up in the morning what we were going to encounter there. I would call either Rivka Hout or Phyllis Chesler, clinky on the phone or by collect call. And I would just account in stunned what we were encountering there. And I remember Phyllis said to me once, Shulamit, that's patriarchy that you're up against. And that was absolutely true. And that remains the case. In other words, what we're doing is not objectionable. How could it be objectionable for women to do the same thing that when men do it, it's a mitzvah, for women doing it to it suddenly becomes something destructive and negative? That's absurd. So it has to do with ingrained prejudice and with financial investment and all kinds of political investment in a certain kind of order at the Kotel. So in brief, that the purpose of the group that we, Cheryl and I and others, including all the original founders of this except Anat Hoffman, that is Rivka, who died a few years ago, was absolutely with us, and Bon Haberman, who also unfortunately died young, a little bit over 2 years ago, was absolutely with us. Every founder of the group, Susan Aronoff, Norma Joseph, Miriam Benson, everybody who was originally this remains part of it and maintains the ongoing goals of it, which are simply women's tefillah at the Kotel. We don't accept substituting another cause for this one, and we don't accept a substitute location.
Your group went through so much together over something like 3 decades of davening together and reading Megillot and having bat mitzvahs there. And you went through thick and thin and getting insults and having chairs thrown at you. After so many shared emotional and spiritual experiences, what led to a split between the Women of the Wall and original Women of the Wall in October 2013?
Simply that they, the board of Women of the Wall, decided with 2 votes cast against, mine and one other, to leave the wall, to forgo the original goal, the only goal of the group, which is women's tefillah at the Kotel, and to begin to, in the name of reform and conservative movements, to take on another goal. We, as Shulamit has pointed out, almost all of the original women and longtime supporters and activists like me said, we will not forego the original goal, the ongoing goal, the goal that we had at that point had significant victories. We had won court cases that supported our rights, acknowledged our rights. We had rabbinic support, and we had pretty much the support of the community in Israel, with a few exceptions, and outside of Israel as well, including JOFA. So it was their decision to move, which left us with the only option, which was to continue our efforts to have the women's tefillah at the Kotel.
Tell us about this plan that was created by Natan Sharansky and Avichai Mendelblit to create space for egalitarian prayer near the Kotel, at or near the Kotel.
Yeah. Actually, may I tell a short story that when Sharansky first was asked to get involved with this, we met with him, and actually Shulamit was part of the group, the board that went to meet with Sharansky, and we absolutely, as one, told him that Women of the Wall were not interested in moving to another site. As Anat Hoffman called Robinson's Arch, the back of the bus, Sug Bet, second class. There was no interest in doing that. We subsequently met with Avichai Mendelblit and told him the same thing. In the month of Elul 2013, Naftali Bennett, who was then Minister of Religion, built the beginning of the platform that is now at Robinson's Arch for egalitarian prayer, which, by the way, had been happening at Robinson's Arch for many years even before that. But Bennett built a platform which was more accessible, a little bit nicer, and Anat called for a quote-unquote sleep-in. The members of the board of Women of the Wall spent the night at the Kotel, which is an amazing experience, by the way, and it was in protest of building a place at Robinson's Arch and insisting that Women of the Wall go there. And I can tell you that in the morning, after some of us had spent the night and been awake all night, leaders of the conservative and reform movement came to show their solidarity. And I remember distinctly that they said to us, we understand that you cannot support our goals of having egalitarian prayer at Robinson's Arch. We support you in your goals of women's prayer at the Kotel, and we will go our way. Within a month, Anat had changed her mind and convinced, as I said, most of the members of the board to follow with her.
So how has the plan fared politically? It seems to have run aground at this point. And
if I can just add something. Cheryl said, and I just want to make sure that it's very clear. There is egalitarian prayer near the Kotel, and there has been for over 17 years. I've been there many times. If you go to the Facebook page, the website of the conservative movement, the reform movement, you'll see they're very proud of the fact that they hold bat and bar mitzvahs there and other ceremonies when they have led rabbinic delegations to protest the failure of the Netanyahu government to implement the deal for the Kotel. They've had hundreds of people there. It's not that there is no egalitarian option near the Kotel. There is, and there has been. I want to make another thing clear. When the deal is described, it's described in very disingenuous and misleading terms, and this is very disturbing to me and to us. What we hear is that the deal for the Kotel would have created egalitarian space at the Kotel, and that is simply not true. There is egalitarian space. It is at Robinson's Arch. It is not at anything anyone calls the Kotel. The Kotel appears on maps. It's where dignitaries go. The Pope goes, Trump. We all know what the Kotel is. There was never an agreement to have an egalitarian space created there. The agreement was, as Cheryl alluded, to improve. I mean, Bennett started doing that. And under Sharansky had this grand idea to do this astounding rebuilding of the whole site. A very, very grand idea, which was never going to happen. But what the conservative and the reform movements wanted in this deal was state recognition and state funding near the Kotel. And that's a goal of theirs that they've wanted for a long time. They made an agreement with the government that they would not press their claim at the Kotel itself, that they would accept that recognition and funding at Robinson's Arch. For those who don't know, you can look it up, you can find it. the second temple, the Herodian temple, was a massive structure. It was one of the wonders of the ancient world. It was huge, and there were retaining walls because there was a massive structure on Har HaBayit. So what we know as the Western Wall, the Kotel was a portion of that Western Wall, and it continues south for quite some distance. Robinson's Arch, as the name became known, once that area, the southern part of the Western Wall, started to be excavated in the 19th century, there was an archaeologist, Robinson, and he excavated it. Anyway, that's where the egalitarian site is, and that's what was supposed to be souped up. And what the Reform and Conservative movements demanded in the deal was that there be a revised entry to the whole area, and that there be equal signage so that the egalitarian space would be listed, and it would be accessible and visible, and critical to them, it would have equal status with the Kotel. Now, our part here, which people don't know because the information has been withheld from them, and that is not okay. Why would the Haredi establishment, which runs the Kotel and so much else in this country, ever have agreed to a deal for state funding and recognition of the conservative and the reform movements, which they regularly label as satanic and up there with the Nazis in the destruction of the Jewish people? Why would this establishment ever have gone along with an agreement to have recognition and state funding for these movements near the Kotel? So inquiring minds need to ask, and I don't hear this question being asked, and reporters don't, but it needs to be asked. Why did they ever agree to it? That the deal failed, we can talk about, but they agreed to it to begin with. Rabbi Rabinowitz, the absolutely Haredi retrograde administrator of the Kotel, agreed to it. All the Haredi parties in the Knesset knew about it and agreed to it. The chief rabbis, both of them, knew about it and agreed to it. Why? Because the trade-off for making Robinson's Arch an official site of Reform and Conservative Tfilat was to change the status of the Kotel from Atar Le'umi Kadosh, which is its official legal status, meaning it is a national holy site. It is not a synagogue. Under any auspices, it is a national holy site. And the deal would have changed that status officially to Haredi synagogue, from which women's group Tfilah, which we enact there regularly. As Cheryl said, we have Supreme Court recognition of the legality of it, and we have district court recognition that it's also minhag hamakom, it's a custom of the place. We have won every legal battle on this. This deal would have bulldozed all of that. It would have made the Kotel, the national holy site of all of us, including secular Jews, a Haredi synagogue, from which women's group Tfilah, that is, we daven together, our voices are heard. Those of us who put on talit and tefillin do that. We read Torah there when we're able to get one in. That would have been not only banished, it would have been made a criminal offense, punishable by long years in jail and serious fines. That was the deal. You can look it up. Don't take my word for it. That was the deal. And what happened was that after it was announced, Ateret Kohanim, and it gets complicated, but Ateret Kohanim, which doesn't like the Haredi establishment, paid a ton of money to publicize this in the Haredi street. Sure that when the Haredi street got wind of this, they would rise up, which is exactly what happened. And then the deal became politically untenable for the entire Haredi establishment, and they backed out of it. And they told Netanyahu that if he implements it, they'll bring down the government. And that's why the deal was not implemented. But that is what the deal is. It is not progressive. It is regressive. And it would take away all the rights that Jewish women have won at the Kotel and banish us to Robinson's Arch.
Let me just underline one other point, or the point Shulamit made. We all in our group, and probably in Women of the Wall, also support reform and conservative. We would love to have them have official recognition. The price is too high. If the price is, as Shulamit has said, the expulsion of women who want to pray at the Kotel, not under Shmuel Rabinovich's direction, but as our own minhagim are, that price is just too high. There are other ways of getting recognition of non-Orthodox movements.
Thank you. That's a very important distinction that you've made. What is it that you're seeking in going to court on January 14th? And do you have any hope of getting a favorable solution?
Shulamit.
As we've said, I mean, in 2003, there was a court ruling, Supreme Court ruling, that said, of course, that everything that we're trying to do is legal, but that it was politically sensitive and blah blah. We should try to work something out at Robinson's Arch. The government, they gave the government a year to make Robinson's Arch accessible and fit for Tfilat, which it wasn't anyway. So they never did it. But we have of course, a ruling that everything, how could you rule that Tfilah is illegal at the Kotel when women do it? It's rank misogyny. And of course, the court, upheld the legality of it. And then in 2013, we had a district court ruling that said in addition that it's minhag makom. Not only, of course, is it legal, but it's also, by that time, we've been doing it for 25 years. It was a custom of the place. In 2010, the rabbinic administrator of the Kotel, Shmuel Rabinowitz, posted a notice on his website that said that henceforth, nobody's allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to the Kotel, which on the face of it is a very strange thing to have posted, because restrictions on Jews bringing a Torah to the Kotel is reminiscent of the Ottomans, the British, right? Very strange for Jews in the Jewish state post-67 to be saying that, but that's what he said. It sounds gender neutral, but gotcha, it isn't, because when we women try to get one of the dozens, there are reputed to be about 170, 180 Sifrei Torah at the Kotel, Rabinowitz refuses to let women have any of them. So we can't bring one in, and he won't let us have it. Gotcha, you can't read Torah. So we have secreted one in many times. I invite you and JOFA supporters to go to the Facebook page of Original Women of the Wall. You'll see photos and you'll see videos of us reading Torah at the wall. When we can, we do it. But he's blocked it, Rabinowitz. And our Supreme Court case, which is being brought by the Center for Women's Justice and its director, Dr. Susan Weiss, and you probably know, and people at JOFA probably know, a major advocate for women's rights here and for Aguna rights. She's leading the case, and our suit challenges the legality, the authority of Rabbi Rabinowitz to have issued that ruling. We say that it's illegal, and that the court, what we want is for the court to enforce its prior rulings, which says that we can do all of this. That's the suit. So the court is very political, and it tried to get, for 30 years, it's tried to get rid of this case. It does not like to rule on contentious cases that are about state and religion. So while the deal was on the table, or they had a hope for it, they wanted the deal to go through, because then we would have been banished to Robinson's Arch, and that's our problem. But now Netanyahu and the Haredim have frozen the deal, so the court cannot evade this case. And about 2 months ago, they upped the number of justices to 9, which is a very high number of justices. And it means that they're taking the case very seriously, and that they want cover for potentially issuing a sweeping ruling. So we hope they will.
Well, we wish you very good luck there.
Thank you.
Over the years, Women of the Wall encompassed a wide denominational spectrum, allowing women of different beliefs to daven together, with the Shalech Tzibur being able to decide whether or not to include Davar Shabikdusha. Now that this split has happened, what is the denominational makeup of Original Women of the Wall? And is it still pluralistic?
Let me just say one thing, and then Shulamit, I'd love for you to talk about the Tfilah policy that we instituted. Until 2012, as Shulamit said in her opening statement, the tefillah of Women of the Wall always was done as a women's tefillah group. No divarim shebekdusha were done. In 2012, I edited the first Siddur for Women of the Wall, and at that point, we began to have a more, shall I say, pluralistic policy. Shulamit, can you explain that?
When Rivka Hout, Zichrona Levracha, first suggested the first tefillah, she made it clear that it had to follow Orthodox halacha, but she wanted women from all streams of Judaism to participate. It was a very important symbolic action. 1988 was one of the times that the Mihu Yehudi thing was going on. There was an incredible amount of sinat chinam being thrown around. And we all agreed to do this with Rivka and to follow Orthodox guidelines as an act of solidarity and love, as an act of tikkun against sinat chinam. That was a very, very dear thing to me and to all of us who did it. I want to stress again that the woman who led Tfilah, Gila Razel Robinson, was and Deborah Brin were Reconstructionist rabbis. I affiliate with no movement. I actually didn't want to lead Tfilah because I do all of those things, but I was willing to read Torah. And Phyllis Chesler, who doesn't affiliate with any of these labels, we all got together in an act of solidarity and mutual self-respect and recognition and accommodation. And that is extremely precious. And that is a core part of who we are. And that also has not changed. The group did, even when Bana in that first year was chafing under the Orthodox rules and wanted to have some other options. What we ended up coming up with, which is a policy that I am enormously proud of, and it appeared for a while in the Siddur that Women of the Wall published, which Cheryl did the heavy lifting on to produce. And the Tfilat policy says as follows, that yes, as you said, Rosie, whoever is leading, if it's an Orthodox woman, we follow her minhag, including those of us who daven in an egalitarian way and don't normally restrict ourselves in this fashion. We follow her minhag, we respect it, and we do it. If the woman wants to count the group as a minyan, we only do that if there are 10 women who will so count themselves. We will never count an Orthodox woman as part of the minyan if she does not include herself in that, because we respect everybody's custom and we don't violate anyone's conscience. And when we get to Dvarim Shebikdusha, an Orthodox woman simply does reservatio mentalis. She doesn't remove herself physically, but she removes herself mentally. We don't count her. She does not count herself, but she stays there with us as we stay with her when it's done in the Orthodox fashion. And our Tfilat policy appears on our Facebook page. I am enormously proud of it. We enact this all the time so that we in practice, and not just, in highfalutin journal articles or something, we are the only group that I know of that does this, that actually prays together and alternates policy in this way that respects everybody.
That's a very wonderful way of respecting pluralism and still being very true to your principles, each individual person's principles. Kotel, which is the Israeli Orthodox feminist organization, which is sort of JOFA's sister organization in Israel, has endorsed the position of original Women of the Wall. Has that endorsement helped you or hindered you? Has it made it seem like you're more of an Orthodox group? Tell me about that.
We're delighted. Kotel is a plaintiff with us. They joined as a plaintiff. They're on the lawsuit with us. Their position is, and Hannah Kahat is one of the plaintiffs, and she was the past director of Kotel, that Orthodox women should not be banished from, no woman should be banished from the Kotel because of her minhag tefillah. But the deal is for egalitarian Judaism, for mixed tefillah. And Orthodox women do not participate in those tefillot. And she and the women who are members of Kolech do not want to be forced to participate in that. What the Women of the Wall have said is that if Orthodox women want a mechitza at Robinson's Arch and they make that request known in advance, I'm not sure how much in advance that has to be done, they'll get a mechitza for them. Cheryl has pointed out that since it's an open space, one fence would not be enough, right? You'd have to have 4 of them, and you'd have to have a pen. What that proposal would also do would be to marginalize women in this egalitarian space, which is not a feminist position. Women are half the Jewish people. We're not going to be marginalized anywhere. We're not going to be marginalized at the Kotel. And as I understand Kolech's position, they refuse to be marginalized at Robinson's Arch. I mean, the other issue for them, as it is for us, is why go along with banishing women's tefillah from the Kotel when it has complete legal recognition, it has 30 years of precedence. Why force women to go to Robinson's Arch? So yeah, Kolech is with us, and we're very, very proud of it. We're very happy about it.
That's good.
And can I point out one other thing that maybe isn't clear? We've talked about, and yesterday I believe Annette Hoffman spoke about, the violence that we've met over the years. But I want to point out that is now pretty rare, certainly for our group. In the 3-4 years that we've been meeting, I think there was maybe one time where we met any violence. Just 2 days ago, I went to the Kotel with 2 other women who had one of them was a student who had expressed to me a desire to go to the Kotel to pray, and the 3 of us put on talit and tefillin in the women's section, and there was not a word said to us. There was not anything done. We davened and we went home, and that's what happens at Original Women of the Wall Tfilah on a regular basis.
So,
right. So the claim that that it's mayhem there when women come and put on talit tefillin and pray together is simply not true. It's just not true. Go to our Facebook page. You'll see tons of photo evidence. It's just not true.
So perhaps the Haredi women at the wall have gotten more used to your presence. And have any Haredi women come and joined you in tefillah?
There was actually one tefillah very early on where one woman came over to tell us that we shouldn't be davening. I forget her exact words. And one of our women said to her, sort of motioned to her, "Shh, we're about to do Kedusha." And she immediately got quiet and then stood next to us while we did Kedusha, and then proceeded afterwards to tell us that we shouldn't be there. It was very amusing and sweet, actually. So yes, Rosie, I think people have gotten used to us, but it's also true that most people, it's not maybe their minhag, it's our minhag, and they just go on with their tefillah. We're not disruptive, and they're not disruptive. There's no need for it. The Kotel, although the women's section has shrunk over the years, there's enough space there for people to do their own thing. And we certainly don't want to stop anybody from practicing their form of tefillah, just as we don't want them to stop us.
Yeah, people largely just ignore us, which is what we want.
What is your vision of how you'd like your davening at the Kotel as a group to be in the future? And would you favor a time-sharing arrangement where you could come alone for an hour or 2 a month and then not interact with any other group? Has that ever been considered, a time-sharing?
It's been considered, but the exact story, the story I just told you about a young woman who turned to us on our Facebook page and said she wanted to go to the Kotel, and she was leaving the country to go back to New York. That couldn't happen if we had agreed to a timeshare. we would like to be able to go. Shulamit also mentioned, Bana's way too early death. When Bana first got her diagnosis of cancer, she told me and others that she wanted to go to the Kotel to pray, and she and I went. I joined her at the Kotel with Talit and Tefillin, again, a quiet Tfilat, and we weren't bothered. We want to have the option of being able to go to the Kotel whenever we want, and we want other women to have the option to go to the Kotel whenever they want. We don't want to have to announce it in advance so that other people know. As we've pointed out, it doesn't disturb other people. Generally, it doesn't bother, and it will become more and more considered. This is what happens at the Kotel.
I mean, about time sharing, first of all, it has been suggested. It was even suggested in as part of legal dealings and negotiations in the very long time, the many, many years that the first Supreme Court lawsuit went on. And it's detailed. Phyllis Chesler and Rivka Hout edited an absolutely marvelous book, if you can see it.
I've got it too.
I have it too.
Okay, great.
I've been reading it.
It's a superb book. I just taught a course at Hebrew University on the theory and practice of feminist Judaism, and I used it. And every time I use it, I'm impressed again with how superb it is. The articles are wonderful. But if you read Frances Radai, who's a professor of retired now of law, a major name, you read her article about this, you'll see, and Bana wrote an extensive article, and she talks about all the dealings and the proposals that were made in the first few years to try to negotiate in good faith with this situation. And one of the proposals was time sharing, and we asked for 11 hours a year.
Whoa!
And that was rejected. Okay, so, and we did that as an act of good faith, but what the rejection showed is what I said earlier. This is not about women's tefillah, it's about patriarchy. I mean, it is, it's patriarchy. You wanna know what it is? This is it. And it's about politics and power and money, because there's a ton of it in the administration of the Kotel. And, Rabinowitz, not that he doesn't want us out of there, he does, but he's under tremendous pressure from his people who don't like him and are saying, you see, he agreed to the deal. Let's, delegitimize him. I mean, the stuff that goes on. They said no. So in principle, it's a bad proposal for the reasons that Cheryl said. I mean, why should we not? But what are we doing there? We're praying. Why should we not be able to go? And what I say is, tongue in cheek, but okay with me, I'd do it. Time sharing means they time share too, right? Isn't that what sharing means, Rosie? Isn't that what you taught your kids? Share. So they go to Robinson's Arch for the same amount of time that we go in peace to the Kotel. Fair? No, not fair. Then it's not fair.
Not likely to happen.
No. So I've spoken with Susan Weiss, our attorney, because our next Supreme Court hearing is coming up very soon. It's January 14th. We've been at it for 30 years. It's really, what new argument can she make? She says, we say the same thing again and again and again. And she said, should I bring up the time sharing thing? And I said, if tactically it gets us somewhere, let's talk about it. And she came back, she consulted with a variety of people, and they said, no, not at this point, not at this point. So, we're back to just saying, in God's name, it's been 30 years, you have to act. At a certain point, the Yiddish expression, tochas aftish, just get on with it already. Stop looking for a political deal to get the court off the responsibility of ruling on a major question here. The question is obviously about women's rights and our civil equality in this country and in general. But the other issue here is that I stated in the beginning, the Kotel is not a synagogue. It's a national holy site. It belongs to the entire Jewish people. And it should be administered as such. And what the Haredi establishment is doing is what they do, which is they try to expand their reach de facto. And then that becomes the status quo. And then they say, you've got to defend the status quo. And that's what they're doing. And they're doing it in a lot of other ways. So, requiring that there be supervision of women in mikvaot, There's no halachic requirement. They have no business doing that. Telling women that we can't light Chanukiot at the Kotel, where do they come to do that? And then in recent years, Rabinowitz has argued that it's not just the Kotel, it's the Kotel Plaza, and now it's into the Rova where women can't light Chanukiot in public. I mean, it just keeps going. And so this suit is about the importance of freedom of conscience, civic liberties, recognition and respect for individual religious customs, and reining in illicit power of the Haredi rabbinic establishment. So it's very important that the court rule on this finally, stop looking for excuses not to rule, and rule correctly. What we're asking for at this point is not even a primary ruling. We have that. We're asking them to enforce their own ruling, which is that women can read Torah at the wall with and have access to the Sifrei Torah that are there. And if they won't give us access to them, so let us bring one in. We'll do that. But they have to stop this fetish, and that's what it is about women and Torah.
What can we in America do to strengthen your struggle for women's rights at the Kotel?
First of all, join us. Come daven with us. Cheryl organizes these Tfilot. It's a tremendous amount of effort, one-on-one. She can talk about it to get this group going in a regular way, to organize it. Who comes? Support us. Go to our Facebook page. We have a website that badly needs work, and donate. So that we have, it's all volunteer. We have, what Women of the Wall have now is institutional support from the Reform and Conservative movements. They have a staff, they have an office, they have professional help with PR, with an education director. They sell stuff. They have means. We don't, and we need, and it shows if you look at our website. We need help. So funding will help. What would really help is to get the word out about what this deal is, because that knowledge is being actively withheld, and that troubles us greatly. You're perfectly, in my respect, if you have a position and I disagree with it, go ahead and argue for it. But don't withhold pivotal core information from people and have them take a position about something on the basis of misinformation. And that's what's gone on. So you've heard this now, it'll be archived. I hope people listen to it. Spread the word so that people know, and that what's at stake here is something very precious, which is women's Tfilat, the Kotel.
Yeah, again, let me underline, our Tfilot are not scheduled on a regular basis. We don't have a Rosh Chodesh because that's been claimed, and as long as Women of the Wall, Nashot Kotel is at the Kotel, at the women's section, some of us, I try to go regularly on Rosh Chodesh, so we plan other days, some days Torah reading, some days not, for convenience sake. But also, if any of people listening who are in North America or anywhere else, or not in Jerusalem, and you would like to come, send us a message through our Facebook page. Let us know when you'd like to come. We'll organize. Our next Tfilah is actually scheduled for tomorrow morning. We're a little bit in doubt because of bad weather predicted, but somebody turned to us, one of our supporters, asked us if she could say Kaddish. She has a yard site, and we got women together to come to the Kotel in the middle of the winter to help our friend and supporter say Kaddish. So for that reason or any other that you would like to go to the Kotel as a group, let us know, and we'll be happy, as long as we have the time in advance to do it. We'll schedule a tefillah to suit your time in Israel, in Jerusalem.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, absolutely.
If I could, I want to say something about why women's tefillah in an age of egalitarianism. I think it's an important question to ask and to address. So first of all, for Orthodox sisters, egalitarian tefillah is not their custom, and it's not an option for them. And that's one reason. And it's very precious to us that women from all streams of Judaism and all customs and practice feel comfortable and can pray with us. So that's one. But even for those of us who participate in egalitarian tefillah, it's very important that there be an option for women's tefillah. When I go to the Kotel, and believe me, when I go by myself, it's not a happy place to be. What they have turned it into in an ongoing way, or in the process of turning it into, which is a Haredi shul, and I call it the incredible shrinking women's section. It keeps getting smaller. It's a degrading place for women. It does not feel good to be there. When I go with a group of women, however, and I pray with them, I connect to that place. I see Judaism in female form, and I hear it in female voice. And I hear it and I see it in that place. And that is inexpressibly precious, and it's important. So even those of us who participate in egalitarian Judaism, egalitarianism does not obviate feminism. Feminism is not solved in egalitarianism. We may change the practices of tefillah and of ritual, but if you open the Chumash, the Tanakh, if you open the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Shutim, any of rabbinic Judaism, open it up and you will see your marginality there as a woman. You will see yourself as other there. Your otherness comes off the page at you. And nothing is going to change that, because we're not going to rewrite the Tanakh, and we're not going to rewrite 4,000 years of Jewish literacy and texts. There are texts, and every time a woman opens them, it's a very different experience than a man opening them. A man sees himself as Jew in those things, and women see ourselves as other. That doesn't change. And so feminism is created anew every time we reconnect to our own tradition. And that's why we need women's groups and women's solidarity with one another, so that we can travel this difficult journey of both being connected and being disconnected. And when I go to the Kotel, I am whole as a woman, and that's precious, and it has to continue. So that's why, women's tefillah in an era of egalitarianism, and why not Robinson's Arch or somewhere else. First of all, Cheryl said it, and we respect it. People want to go to Robinson's Arch. I respect the Reform and conservative Jews who want a place where they can go and not have to deal with what goes on at the Kotel. That's their right, and I support it and respect it. What we don't accept is that they can take our rights as the currency to pay for their rights, and use women's struggle and our achievements to get what they want. That is a very sad chapter in women's history altogether, and we're not about to let that happen here. But if they want to go do it somewhere else, that's perfectly fine, and I respect it. But the Kotel is the site of thousands of years of Jewish memory and history and devotion, of hopes, of prayers, of weeping, and a more recent history of rejoicing. And I want to be there, and nobody's going to tell me that I have to go somewhere else in order to be who I am as a Jew and as a woman. So this is our cause, and it doesn't change, and it doesn't make us naive, and it doesn't make us quote unquote purists. It makes us committed to our principles.
It's a beautiful statement of, first of all, the strength of women's tefillah done together. As somebody who's spent over 30 years in women's tefillah groups, it really is special in a way that ordinary davening is not. And thank you for that beautiful statement. I think we're pretty much finished now. Is there anything else that either of you would like to say? Yours was a wonderful concluding statement.
So I would just like to again underline that we encourage you to join us when you come to Jerusalem, to support us from afar if you must. We can use all sorts of help. And again, I want to also underline that my experience with women's tefillah at the Kotel is it's beautiful, inspiring, and a wonderful experience. And come join us. It would be our pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Yasher kochachem.
Bruch to you.
Okay. I think we can sign out now.
Okay, well, thank you, Rosie.